Good Thursday to you, everybody in COM 710. Welcome again to week boom, bam, 13 and our review of week 12. Okay, this is the video in which we take a look what you did last week, and we throw a little bit of information, additional information, a little feedback to you. Make sure everybody is on the right track. Okay, so last week, week 12, you finished up the work by Vernon, which was a dissertation for her, and then transformed into a book. And again, I have asked you as you read to be critical of what she's up to and how it is she handles her evidence. Okay, so I asked you to summarize her methodology, paying particular attention to the sources that she cites in constructing and justifying the proposed methodology. Holly, you went first, so let's take you first. You say in the methodology section, Vernon describes the study, a qualitative research design utilizing a case study. She explains her reasonings behind why she chose what she did. Excuse me, even citing the reasons why the case study approach has been a useful research strategy. She also dived into the merits of qualitative study and using historical systemic methodology. She went into how a qualitative historical methodology works and why it worked for her particular study. I found her methodology section more cited than supported than her literature review. She certainly explained the merits of each. Okay, fair enough. That's exactly right. She essentially did a historical critical analysis, because remember, what she's looking at is how it is that Adventist World Radio came to Tanzania and what they did. Not necessarily, what kind of impact they had, although she could have done that, okay? But that would be a different type of study. All right, good answer. Question number 2, consider the research questions Vernon listed in chapter 5. And what I meant by that was the large overarching research question. And then she takes research question number 1 and divides it into several parts, A, B, C, D, and E. I want you to select one of these and briefly summarize her answer. In doing so, evaluate the answer, noting where she answered correctly. Mike, let's look at you. I've chosen to look at Vernon's research question, RQ1A. What factors contributed to the SDA Church's engagement in the use of religious radio broadcasting to fulfill their stated global mission within the Tanzanian Union mission? In other words, why there? Okay, they could be just about anywhere. Vernon found that 4 factors contributed to the SDA Church's use of radio to fulfill the mission. The first was the degree of freedom prevalent in the country. The second was the number of SDA members within the population. And the third was the ability of a local church organization to fund its initiative. And finally, the availability of personnel to follow up on contacts initiated by a ADR. In addition, Vernon found that the SDA Church was systemic in its planning and coordination of initiatives. In addition, the church's criteria for determining priorities are based on the region's number of unreached people, the audience limitation of freedom, audience needs, financial needs, etc. In capturing this data, Vernon's conclusions are answered adequately. Okay, good. All right, that's what we're looking for. And so when you pick up an article, I typically go straight to the abstract, okay? Because if it's not always, it's not apples to apples, but if an author gets one section wrong, then that's sort of a red flag for me that how are they going to handle the rest of the methodology in constructing a paper? So I go to the abstract first, and if the essential things in that belong in an abstract are in an abstract, and then I quickly skim through or read the introduction. Then I get to the hypotheses or research questions. Unless I'm looking for sources about something that I study, to be very honest with you, I spend very little time in the literature section. I'm much more interested in what the scholar is doing with the question at hand. How are they posing it? What kind of methodology are they proposing to answer it? Given that methodology, what kind of data do they pull down, and then how do they handle it? And those 4 things will tell you more about the utility of someone's research than all of that other stuff. That is literature review and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's where I go. Question number 3. In chapter 6, Verne discusses the limitations of her study. Given these limitations, consider and briefly discuss possible research designs as projects that could fill in. So here's what I want you to do too. When you are reading material, okay, especially something, if it's a particular area that interests you, I want you to have your eyes open and look for the gaps. And one of the most direct and deliberate ways to find the gaps is, what does the author say? Because look, all research is bound by limitations. That's just the way it is. I mean, you can't write the Encyclopedia Britannica every time you sit down. You just don't have time. Okay, so read the consideration for future research or the limitations, and see if there's a gap that you can step into. Now, if the answer is no, then your next is something that really interests you by way of subject matter. The next question on your mind is, well, how do I organize and arrange myself, my schedule, my availability, my finances, so I could step into that gap? Okay, get good at looking for the gap, right? Erica, let's take a look at you. Vernon's case study limitations are opportunities for future research. Methodology can be supplemented with surveys, more detailed demographic information from listeners. Yeah. So one of the big gaps here, good point, Erica, is that you could say, okay, we've got a pretty good historical picture of what Adventist World Radio did. Now, why don't we follow it up with a study about the efficacy of what they did? Did they, because they wanted, they were quite clear. They wanted to make Christian converts. Did they? Okay, you could look at that historically by looking at, say, the growth of churches and people that were aware of Adventist World Radio, or you could do it so that'd be qualitatively, or you could do it quantitatively by running a survey and say, hey, do you attend a church? Did you grow up in the church? No. Were you came in as a convert? Yes. Do you listen to any of the following programs? Adventist World Radio programs, and then you run a causation, like a regression analysis in the quantitative research, to connect the one to the other. Okay. Geographical limitations are likely mitigatable given the internet database and virtual meeting facilities. Adventist World Radio stakeholders interviews. Today's technology allows us to explore studies as focus groups, to interview and listeners of specific age groups to discuss their perceptions of Adventist World Radio programming in the past. Comparative studies are also the opportunities to show the effect of Adventist World Radio in other African countries. Today's access to historical recordings can allow us to conduct interviews of multiple generations when they were exposed to Adventist World Radio programming to capture cross-generation reactions. Excellent, excellent. Now, although I want to, you're right, Erica, that having, distance connectivity through the internet available is handy. I want to encourage you, especially when you're doing qualitative research, to think in terms of if at all possible, face-to-face. Okay, there is something that's happening when you're sitting down with someone. There are cues and clues to their behavior. Because remember, quantitative research is good at telling you that something is going on, and a little bit why. Qualitative research is really good at answering the why is this happening. And when you're face to face with someone, you're in person. This is one of the things you want to practice as a qualitative researcher, is picking up on, I hate to sound so ethereal, but on the energy, on the subtle cues that are being transmitted by the person, and it's just not the same when you're doing it over distance. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it isn't the same. I've done both, and I can tell you it's not the same. All right, question number 4. After completing Vernon's book, what, in your opinion, is at least one future area of research that would either complement or fill in topics that Vernon did not cover in her work? So here again, you are looking for the gaps. Where can you jump in? Okay. NASA. I think it would be neat to know how much social media has impacted Generation Z and millennials' view on Christianity. So this is, yeah, you'd almost be like jumping forward because, you know, did they segue over from radio, hearing it because their parents listened to it, or and I don't know if the Adventist World Church, Seventh-day Adventist World Church, jumped into the digital space. That would be an interesting investigation. Okay, Mike. After considering Vernon's 2012 study, a more robust understanding of the messaging strategies and their impact would hold value. Consider previous discussions about the rise of prosperity gospel in Africa and the determination of missionaries to return to orthodoxy to combat PG authentically. I think that understanding how media messages can appeal to African audiences is exceptionally timely. Yeah, I mean, how what sort of messages beyond the health and wealth gospel have appeal? Because if you're going to bring people back to orthodoxy, I mean, an orthodoxy by way of the message sort of stands for itself, stands on its own. So, I mean, but how do you package it? How do you platform it? Good question. Okay. That remains a critical piece that needs to be added to the study, and more thorough understanding of what messaging effectively meets the needs of African audiences would be of great value. I agree. Okay. Good answers, one and all. Okay. So we're done with the Vernon book. Okay. And we're in the sort of the home stretch of, well, we're coming around the back corner, the home stretch of the semester. Okay. So for this week, focus on those readings, not Horeb, sorry, problems with copyright. Focus on those readings that look at religious broadcasting in the Middle East and religious broadcasting by Christians in a fully immersed Islamic environment, that is, in the Middle East. And this is an area where I happen to have a considerable level of expertise. I wrote a dissertation on it, and I've spent many, many years working with Christians in the Middle East, and in some instances, showing them how to use media to help solve some of their problems. All right. So I'm interested to hear what you think. All right. Okay, everybody. That's it. Have a wunderbar rest of the week and the weekend. And I will see you on Canvas. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.